Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for doing whatever you're doing to get the Be Better Golf podcast, number 2 here today with Jack DeVore. Hey, Jack, how's it going?
Hey, good. How's it going?
Give us a little update on your game, Jack.
Yeah, so I'm back at Virginia Tech, Blacksburg, Virginia. But I am a member at the river course here, which is like about 15-20 minutes from my house. So I've been playing a lot. This weekend I played 18 twice and threw another emergency 9 in there. A couple low 80s at 39, so not playing how I want to, but I feel like I'm close. Just the full swing isn't quite there.
Missing too many greens, huh?
Yeah, I'm missing too many greens, and the greens out at the course I play at the river course, Beach River Course, are super small. So if you're missing the greens, I feel like I can save myself sometimes, but at some point, really, in order to shoot low scores, you got to hit more.
When you were out here in California, you were putting like really, really well. As the putting held up, or the putting?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
short game's pretty good.
Oh, sharp. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and it's also I don't know like 130, if not longer shots. I'm just pulling wedges for some reason, and I think it may be ball position, too far back, but I'm kind of trying to work around with some setup stuff. So
So today, Jack, that we're going to be interviewing Dr. Rob Neal, who is a golf biomechanics person who has measured, I think, hundreds of PGA Tour and Korn Ferry Tour pros, like people who are involved in Titleist. And he puts on, the sensors all over their body, and he's got a to-go kind of system that does that. And then he's especially really concentrated the last few years in working on wedges. So he did this thing called Wedgecraft, where he took like all kinds of data, like shot link data from the PGA Tour, and then he combined that with club data from, I don't know what they use. We'll have to ask him, like TrackMan or Foresight or something like
right,
that. And then he took the biodynamics data, the sensors on the body and stuff, but out there on in the field, like on the range and everything, to see like, okay, if we look at the shot link data, the how the body's moving and how the club's moving, and put all those pieces together, what can we learn about how the best players in the world are hitting their wedges?
the money zone.
Yeah, that's like, if you talk to a pro golfer, that's what they'll say. They really, really fixate on the wedges, and like thinking like hitting the wedges close is the thing that makes the big difference. I think that Mark Brody and some of the every shot counts people would say that it's not really, really where the difference is totally separated. But I know for sure from talking to PGA Tour players and stuff like that, that wedge play in their mind is like. So basically, what they did was they took all this data and they said, okay, well, what are like the 9 or so things that we can say, like, all right, this is what makes a really great wedge player,
Yeah,
and then they boil that down into lessons. I know that Martin Hall did something with them from the Golf Channel, and some other
of
people
course.
where they tried to take some wedge play stuff. So I thought it was a good idea. And do you remember? I don't know if you were there. Do you remember a guy called Richie Hunt that's been on my channel?
Yeah, I think so. It's
He he
vaguely.
came he came down to my school that I did with Tony in Florida, and he talked to everybody. So Richie, he worked
Oh
for
yeah, I remember him.
yeah,
His thing was he really used like hitting it farther matters. Like
yeah,
there's clear statistics that shows that if you can get off the tee, if you can get the ball farther, it is going to help you.
yeah, like it's like a crazy advantage, huh?
Yeah.
A- And and what do you remember what he said about? Because then people would say like, well, I don't want to hit it further, and then but then I'll be in the trees. I'd rather hit it short and straight.
Yeah, I forget the exact details of what he said, but he said even if you're going to spray it more, he said I don't know, there is a clear statistical advantage to hitting it farther.
So I was thinking like that's something cool to, but I don't know if Richie's available. But anyway, to let everybody know, he works with PGA Tour players. He sets up strategies and like a little white paper book for every tournament for like 4 or 5 different PGA Tour players, every week.
Right.
So if they're going to Bay Hill, they'll say like, okay, he'll like break it down from here's the 3 holes that are opportunities. They're like you can attack here, and here are the 3 holes that for you specifically you have to be a little bit cautious and careful about. But something
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, if I talked to Richie, I was like, hey, if there's like 5 things from the stats and from the uh, pro golf synopsis that you could say that like, like let's take these 5 things we learned from the stats and like then make drills and practice plans to be like, okay, let's golf and practice a little bit more based off of trends and tendencies, what would those five things be? And then guess, so he might say like, okay, for a righty, like not missing right when there's trouble right, or not missing more than 20 yards right when there's trouble left. He might have something like that, and then we could get a golf pro to say like, okay, here's how you eliminate the right shot, and
Yeah,
we could link the data with the tip, so to speak.
definitely. I mean, instead of just going out there and going through the bag like you normally would.
Yeah, and then I'm going to be talking to another guy coming up called Adam Young, who did this book called The Practice Manual. I'm going to go out to Las Vegas and see him. I'm pretty excited about that.
Oh, when are you
And
doing that?
in the end of September, no, yes, I think like September 25th or something like that, a little less than a month from now.
Sweet.
So I'm going to go out there and have like a 4 hour meeting with him. And I might stop by Uncle Don's gold mine or his little his plot, So
Go
I might
go
try.
jump in the river
Yeah, I might try
or
to.
the lake.
Is there one there?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's a lake. Yeah,
Okay,
if you want
cool.
to go.
Right. So I might do that. So the big debate in practice is between block practice and random practice. Okay. So
Okay.
traditionally, block practice would be like you put down, you take like half your bucket of balls and you're hitting 7 irons to 155-yard marker, and you're just again and again. That's like a block of trying to do one thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of traditionally been the way, and then kind of the reaction to that has been, okay, no, it should be random practice, where like, because that's kind of how you play golf. You hit driver, and then you hit
Yeah.
wedge, and then you hit a little chip, and then you go putt a 3-footer, and you hit a 3-wood, and then you hit a hybrid. But then, the reaction to the reaction, because that's how these things work, just like politics, same thing in golf. The reaction to the reaction was that people then started totally discounting the value of block practice and started saying, no, you do need to have some block practice, and then you need to have some random practice as well, like mixed. So these people, that are kind of like fence sitters about it.
Yeah, there's
Tony,
people on both sides.
right, exactly. So it's not really that there's people that are hardcore on both sides, and then there's people that like are just trying to say, oh, there's some good things, the it depends crowd, which is
Yeah.
annoying to deal with. Because I used to try to do like random practice a lot.
Yeah, you would love it. You would do driver 9 iron and then like,
Yeah,
all the
flip
quirky
flopping like
stuff.
crazy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Like going from driver, exactly, driver, niner, and baby pitch, and then like, you know, all these different things. What really changed my mind between block practice and random practice and start thinking about, hey, block practice, I think I've undervalued it, is when we started doing the yardstick drill with the
The
putting.
putter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
that's
mean,
I mean that's block as it gets, right?
that's as block as it gets. So the yardstick drill is it's got the little dot in it,
Oh
and
yeah.
you put the ball in the dot and you putt down the yardstick and you try to do as many in a row. Jack and I got out to like in the 40s, when we were
We did a
40
ton.
putts down there, and I've done 77 now in a row
You've
since I
done
left.
77?
Yeah, I did. I have it written on my board. Now I did change it. Okay, I
Okay.
changed it where I put a green grass adhesive cover, like
Yeah.
it's little bit of velvet, like to it. So because I noticed that if you just touched it, it'd go like rocketing down the yardstick, So
Yeah.
I did change it, and when my numbers have gone up since I've changed it. I'm like, oh, what changed? And I think honestly, what changed is that little hole, when that hole's there, right, and you put the ball down, it sits a little bit down in the hole. But
Right.
then when you put the velvet on top of the hole, now the ball sits down, but it doesn't sit down quite. Excuse me. It doesn't sit down quite as much. Whereas before, when it sat down so much, more like this, when it sat down so much, you would kind of have to, if you hit it level, see like that, Jack,
Yeah.
it would like kind of jump, hit
You'd
this
have to hit
edge.
like you'd have to hit almost down on it to like pop it up. I mean, obviously, like
Either that, or you'd have to like loft it a little too much to jump it out.
right. Well,
So
either alternative was bad for the roll of the ball, right?
Oh yeah, a little bit. So with the velvet, it sits a little bit more on top. I mean,
Right.
on a green, it does sit down, but it does sit down a little bit enough for you to be able to settle it there. And I think that's made a big difference. Anyway, so in doing that it really improved my putting. And I started hearing anecdotes. Like I heard that a guy that when Xander and I were out putting practicing, he's like, did you know that Bubba Watson, the only thing he practiced is 6-footers? He's like, if I'm good
Really?
at 6 footers, then like my long legs will be like fine, and my short ones will be fine. He's like, that's the golden number. And if you remember when Phil Mickelson was doing,
Oh, he did those circle drills for like days, right?
right, right. So he tried to get 100 in a row, and he stretched it out to the length of his 7 iron. At first, you do it to the length of your putter, but then he was like, he got good at that, and then he did the length of his 7 iron. But then also like with bunker play, him and Dave Pell said like, okay, well, if we average all your bunker shots together, you are you're at 15 feet is about your average for your bunker shots, something like that. I forget what it was. Maybe it was 25. So Phil took that number and he stopped practicing from all over the place, and he just started practicing 25-foot bunker shots. And but the thing that really sold me was that like I used to be like a really great putter, and then recently I've been just middling. But like in doing the yardstick thing, like I've become like a legit contender for like best putter in California. Like I'm a good putter. You know, yeah, yeah,
Let's get outside of Long Beach. No, 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 no,
yeah. Right.
no. You are
On my
your
course,
putting.
yeah.
Yeah, your putting has improved
Right.
greatly.
True or not doesn't really matter. In my mind, that's true, and that really helps. You know what I mean? And
Oh,
yard,
putting is. I mean,
yeah,
putting is all confidence. I mean, that's the only thing that. I mean, if you go up and especially anything inside 8 feet, I mean, you gotta have the confidence to think like, not even be worried about it. Like, oh, inside 8 feet, I'm good.
if you don't believe you're gonna make it,
Oh no, you're dead.
you're
You might as well just pick up at that point and give yourself. If you're putting for par from 8 feet or inside 8 to 6 to 8 feet, if you're putting for par, like, and if you don't have the confidence to make it, you should just pencil in the bogey. Just like move on, because like you're not gonna make it. I mean, you're
yeah.
just not. A bunch of the guys I play with here at school, I mean, they're just some of the worst putters you've ever seen. They just have no idea.
Yeah, because I mean, because you can't really putting, you can't. It's not as shareable as far as like social media or whatever, like a drive is or
No,
whatever. So the people like the guys that you're playing golf with, like more social golfers, like they haven't done that much competitive golf, right? The guys you're
no,
playing with this summer or this year.
no.
So if you haven't done much of that and you're more of a social golfer, kind of like I don't know what you would call it, barstool style golfer or something,
Yeah, right.
then you're really fixating on the tips and the things, but you're not fixated on like the focus it takes and the grind it takes to really lock in on you know wiggling it in.
When I play with these guys, they see me off the tee and in the fairways, and they're like, "Oh, okay." But we get around the greens, and it's like, it's like they've never seen the sun before. They're like,
Yeah.
"Whoa, that chip was unreal," or like, "How'd you get it to stop like that?"
Yeah,
But like, it's so funny.
it's what I do. All right. So are you winning money
Yeah, some.
more than you're
Uh,
losing?
yeah, oh yeah, I'm up.
Okay, okay.
Um,
I'm not trying to see if you're making a living doing it. I just want to see if
no,
you're
no,
above
no.
water. Yeah. That happened to me one time. One time I had a big bet with a guy, and
Yeah.
I forget what the discrepancy we had was, and I beat him for like the third time in a row, and he was a little slow on paying me back at the end of the day, and
Oh boy.
I said something to him or what. He's like, "What are you trying to make a living out here?" And like giving me the money, like throwing it at me, and just walked away. So Jack, I'm gonna pause this until they show up so we don't waste our recording time. Okay, that
Cool.
was a
Cool.
good little intro. All right, guys, I'm joined now by Dr. Rob Neal. Where are you joining us from, Doctor?
I'm in Orlando at the moment. I've been spending my summer up in the northeast of the country, but just flew back for a few days yesterday and then return to Connecticut tomorrow.
The thing that got me really interested, I've seen Dr. Rob for years on the Golf Channel and also on YouTube videos. Like you usually see uh, Dr. Rob with this crazy apparatus that he attaches to people, and then a big like octopus tail comes out the back of them, and I think the one of the first things I really noticed you doing was when you were measuring Justin Thomas.
Yeah, I think that was 2016 when I worked with Justin for the PGA Tour. Yeah, and I've been doing the 3D stuff, so I mean, it seems like a lifetime, but
Right.
in the US since 2003, but before that in Australia, and then as an academic, I did 3D work in golf as well. So it's a long journey. Hence the gray hairs.
Right. So what got me excited to talk to you is I really like the idea behind Wedgecraft, and I think what you've done with that is really great because everyone in like kind of the Be Better Golf world, when they read a study about golf, they're just trying to pick it apart to get to the point that's going to help them personally. So give us a little bit of background about what you do as a scientist, how that relates to golf, and then go specifically into what Wedgecraft is.
One of the benefits of doing a PhD and working as an academic is that you learn how to frame research appropriately. And then the evidence-based approach is what allows you to make decisions about what's good, poor, indifferent, and so forth. And so that was the approach that I've taken with 3D for full swing, for putting, and then most recently with wedge play. So the idea was when Lane approached me to do some of this, he initially wanted to do something in putting, and I said, I'm not so keen to do that right now. I've done some work with Phil Kenyon and David Orr and Paul Hurrian, and so, but I said, look, I'd be really happy to delve into short game because I think that there's what Lane describes as a blind spot or just a lack of knowledge that is evidence-based in that part of golf. And so that was about 8 years ago when we started the journey of really investigating what the best players in the world do when they're hitting different wedge shots. And so it was built on the whole ShotLink data set where we looked at shots in the range of 10, 20, 30, 50, 75, and 100-yard carry. And for the short shots, we also looked at open face or really more lofted wedge conditions. So when the leading edges opened up, we did bunker work as well. Our approach was, in essence, fairly simple. They said, all right, well, let's see what the best players in the world do. And at least that's a good starting point. If we can find the common features that these guys use, then I think we've got somewhere to go. The real drive for us was to come up with things that would help golfers while simultaneously helping golf coaches.
It's an interesting that you brought science specifically to wedges, because when people talk about wedge play and how they're good at wedges, it's almost like that's the part of the game that people don't want to get too technical about. It feels very artistic. You think of like how Jordan Spieth does it, this or Phil Mickelson or some of these other great wedge players. They're like, or Raymond Floyd. They're like, he's doing it all with his eyes. Watch his eyes, and he's visualizing and he's creating something. It's between the eyes and the wrists. It's trying to go from bad or mediocre to good is a tough challenge because the information that's out there about what makes you a really elite wedge player seems to be like, oh, you need to be like, Bubba Watson style creativity of just like figuring it out.
I mean, I'm going to attack the notion of artistic characteristics. I think that to be a really good artist or musician, you need to have some creativity, right? But you also need to have the ability to reach all of the notes, all of the registers, put the chords together if you're playing guitar, or access the entire keyboards on a piano, or be able to use color as an artist to create particular depth in your pictures. And so really those things are skills that can be learned. How you piece them together then, and in golf, for example, is, well, that's the choice of the shot that I make in this particular aspect of the game. So as opposed to when you're hitting a 7 or a 6 iron from the fairway or off a low tee to a par 3, the short game shots that you're faced with often give you alternate possibilities. I wouldn't say infinite possibilities, but alternate possibilities that could be quite effective. You could go high, you could go low, you could put spin on it and help to stop it. You can use different lofted clubs. Lots of different approaches can work in these finesse wedge shots. But you don't do that sort of thing when you're hitting a 6 iron. You're trying to get a repetitive swing so you know how far that goes and then get it on the right line. You're not necessarily trying to hit this one 50 feet higher than the last one. Yeah, there are times when, yes, you want to hit, flight one in there low, but that's a 20% change, not a 300% change like you might see in short game shots. I think the ability to perform as a short game expert or wizard relies on having a mountainous set of skills on which you can call. The very best players in the world are able to do that. They're virtuosos, just like you would have virtuoso musicians. They're able to do things that you and I might not be able to do because we don't have access to that, the ability to move the club and your body in a particular way that makes this shot work versus not being able to execute it. What our objective was to do is find out what the things are that you need to be able to control to be an effective wedge player, and then develop the skills necessary to do that so that you can then be effective in the shots that you choose to play. And part of that is the intellect of our control variables, is knowing what the best shot to play is that has the highest probability of success for you. Not for Phil Mickelson, not for Justin Rose, but for you under the circumstances in which you're hitting that shot.
Say, let's just take a hypothetical. I'm in the fairway. I've hit the ball short, like on a par 5 or something, and I've got plenty of green to work with. Like, say, what I would call a half and half shot, so a half carry, half roll would be kind of what I would be thinking. But there's lots of choices. Like, I could, if I wanted to, I could play it low and spin it a little bit more, or hood the face and like have a shorter carry and kind of roll it out, or play it higher. Percentage-wise, is there a percentage-wise way to be able to pick what wedge shot to play? 'Cause, like, for example, like, I know if I played the half carry, half roll, I can pull that shot off and get it inside of, like, let's say 5 feet, probably 7 times out of 10. But, like, I know that if I flopped it, I probably get it inside 5 feet about maybe 2 times out of 10. Is there a certain percentage that is like the watershed for players where, hey, if you can't do this shot more than 50% of the time, so to speak, you shouldn't even be attempting it?
I'm going to be just a little bit more pedantic and say, what length shot is this? Because I think that dictates what your possibilities are. So, and I think it comes down to your ability to get the ball close to the hole is contingent on 2 things: the amount of spin that you can generate and the landing angle of the ball. Of course, there are subtleties to that as well. Are you landing on an upslope versus a downslope or a flat portion of green? It's still really the landing angle relative to the surface that dictates where the ball will stop. The better you become as a wedge player, the closer you hit it to the hole. It's pretty simple that way. Proximity is your best measure of performance. On any given shot, if you know what the spin versus land angle combination is, then you can predict what shot will give you the greatest probability of getting it close to the hole. Let me give you an example. Let's say you've got a pin that's tucked behind a bunker, and the green just, there's been sand blasted out of the bunker, and so now there's a little downslope where that pin's placed. And you've got maybe, let's say, 15 feet carry from the bunker to where the pin is. Green surface is going away from you. All right. If you hit it anywhere near the 10 to 50 yard or even 60 yard zone, you have virtually no chance of getting that shot close to the hole. Because you can't, in the short shots, create enough spin to get it to stop. Now, spin is the ultimate tool for stopping the golf ball. Right? Yes, you might be able to hit a flop shot, but that's a high risk, low probability type shot.
You think spin is the ultimate tool even more than trajectory? Like, more than landing it like a butterfly, like down this way, you'd rather have somebody be able to control it. Why do you like spin even more than trajectory as far as landing angle?
It's pretty simple. If you were to land a ball, let's say go to a concrete surface, If you land at, let's say, 10 degrees from the vertical, so that's a pretty steep land angle. That's an 80-degree land angle. Yep. That thing will just keep bouncing, 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 bouncing until it hits the fence, right? So, but if you put just a little bit of backspin on that, how's that basketball or volleyball or whatever, what's the behavior of that ball going to be? It might land and then go vertical, and then it can bounce on the spot until it runs out of energy.
Right.
So spin changes the friction that occurs between the ball and the ground when the ball lands. And friction is what stops the ball. So if you don't get enough friction, the ball will just keep moving forward. So if you're coming out of the rough, it's not that you can't get the land angle right. You just can't get enough spin on the thing so that when it lands on the surface, it props it up in the air. It just keeps going forward. That's why it doesn't stop.
Yeah, to the risk management, you were talking about this shot that you drew up. You just can't play that kind of shot from there. It's not going to get close.
No, you can't get it close. You can get it on the green, but you can't get it close. But if you go back to 80 yards, you can now hit a shot that launches low, 25-degree launch angle, lands at 50 degrees, and has 10,000 RPM or 11,000 RPM spin on it. That will stop, even on that downslope. But if you don't have that shot, it doesn't matter where you leave it. You can leave it 80 yards or 10 yards. You can't get it close. You have to have the skill to be able to hit that shot. And so there are certain regions where we say your stopping power is high, and those tend to be the longer wedge shots that you will face. There's some that are just a terrible zone to be in, which is somewhere between 40 and about 60. And then the finesse wedge zone under 40, or those give you decent opportunities to get it close because they're low energy type shots. They're more like little chip shots. And so because you're only hitting a 30-yard shot or a 20-yard shot, you would expect to get it reasonably close, unless you're painted into a corner like the one I just did, where you've got a green sloping away from you. You've got to get it over a bunker, blah, blah, blah.
Jack, what do you think?
Yeah, my first question would be, so this could be wrong on my part, Dr. Rob, but when I go out and play with somebody and say he has a 30-yard shot, pretty standard, pitch and putt, or 40-yard shot, if I see them pull out a rangefinder, I think they have no game at all, right? If I see someone pull out a rangefinder from 40 yards, I think to myself, oh, they have no touch or no feel at all. But I mean, looking at everything else and kind of what we've talked about so far, maybe I'm going about that wrong.
I think you're going about it wrong. You need to know what the distance is so that you can know where you need to land the ball to get it close, and then what type of shot you want to hit.
My follow-up question to that be just wedge practice overall. So how, wedge practice, how do you get to the next level?
So we're talking about good golfers here, or anyone?
Yeah, I would say good golfers. What kind of separates the good wedge players to the great wedge players?
So I don't think it's anything remarkably different from becoming good at full swing. The first thing you need to have is sound technique. That means you need to be able to deliver the club appropriately for the shot that you're trying to hit. So there are some shots in finesse wedge zones where you need to be super, super shallow, a couple of degrees down with your attack angle only. There are other times when you need to be able to choose that same implement and go 15 degrees down with it. So you have to have an ability to modify or modulate your technique to meet the demands that the shot requires. And so that means that you have to develop not just one swing, one shot technique that works for this type of shot. You need to be able to have some fundamental skills that then, with modification, allows you to access these other types of club delivery. In the early stages of learning, I am an advocate of doing quite a lot of blocked practice, working on your fundamental techniques. Once you've got those where you can deliver the club the way you need to, then we need to start getting varied in our technique practice or our skills development practice. So lots of variety in the types of shots you hit. And when you go to the highest skill level players, they should be just practicing with one golf ball and hitting one shot from lots of different locations. Hit the shot, pick up your ball, go to the next, throw it to the next location. I watched Jason Day practice for 3 hours at Doral like that, back in around 2012 when he was one of the best players in the world. One ball, 3 hours, just hitting short game shots. And he would just throw the ball, and then wherever it finished, next shot. As opposed to watching Jason Duffner, who's a good wedge player. He got the bag of range balls. They have Pro Vs, of course, and he's just hitting shot after shot after shot, the same shot time and time again.
Classic Duffner.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it just gives you the illusion of towering skill because you're nearly holing every one of these shots. But it's nothing like what you would expect on the golf course, because how many times do you get to hit the same shot twice in a row?
What are the skills that we need to develop to become better wedge players?
I first of all look at the club delivery paradigm, and that we've got a hierarchical set of club delivery elements that are crucial for you to be able to control in order to become a good wedge player. At the top of that tree is attack angle. So you need to be able to go from steep to shallow. Then for the whole range of wedge shots, you need to be able to control the loft that you deliver. So you need to be able to control shaft lean. So there are some shots where you need 15 degrees of shaft lean. There are other shots where there might be only 3 or 4 degrees of shaft lean. By the way, maybe with the exception of a flop shot, all of these short game shots you have a forward leading shaft. Not by much sometimes, but always hands ahead of the club head. So that's the second one. And then the third one is speed. So those are the top three. And then below those are the club path, contact point, and face angle. Face angle seems pretty obvious to me. You want to be able to deliver the face pointing in the direction that you want to hit the shot, right? But that has some interesting challenges when you start opening the leading edge up, is where is the face of that club actually pointing? So,
yeah, because even though the grooves might be like 45 degrees one way, the actual loft of it could, like if we took that little magnetic stick.
Exactly.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Explain that a little bit.
When you open the leading edge up, assuming that you don't hit the golf ball with the leading edge, you hit it with the face of the club, the ball doesn't know where those score lines are pointing. It just knows it got smacked by this plane. Like the surface of the golf club head is a plane and just gets hit by it. Right? Yep, exactly. And so wherever the plane is pointing, and you can just put that magnetic thing on the front of the club face. I don't have one in my office here, but
so if I take this and I turn it this way and that way, it doesn't change the left-right direction of it much. But if it was a driver and I turned it left to right, that changes it like a one-to-one correlation. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the challenge with face angle in wedge play is to be able to know where the loft plane is pointing, because that's the important part. All right. So the normal to the plane of the club face.
Just ask you about the dynamics of what makes a ball spin and how to, like, maximum spin shot or things like that. Because I know that, like, if I have this, right, this ball, sometimes when guys demonstrate the ultimate spinner, like let's say that 50-yard shot that people love on tour where it bounces twice and totally stops. What makes the ball spin? Or like, what are the characteristics that goes into spin first? And then second, just talk to us specifically about that kind of 2 hop and stop or 1 hop and stop shot.
Let's understand, again, just like friction stops the golf ball on the green, friction creates spin during the impact phase. Right? So when a golf ball gets pushed into the face here. It compresses, right? And with this angle here, the ball would want to slide up this angle here. Like if it's coming in like this, it would want to slide up here. But friction is what stops it from doing that, right? That frictional force this way creates the backspin.
So if the face was a super slick surface, like a spaceship or something like that, it would just slide right up.
Slide up here.
Oh, okay.
Or if you get a bit of grass or a bit of oil, sunscreen, it'll just slide up there.
Oh, okay. All right, so that's part one of what creates friction.
Okay, so, but it's also dependent on how much compression you get on the ball. So, like you would think, oh, this is a really oblique angle. I should get lots of friction here, like cutting a table tennis shot, right? A backspin shot in table tennis. But if there's not sufficient pressure into the face, then the ball will just slide along there. Okay? So you need enough compression to hold the ball on the face.
That's why the short shot wouldn't spin very much. That like the
Yep.
10-yard carry.
So the more speed, the more compression you'll get, right? And so then you've got this combination. So there is an optimal range between your attack angle, my left index finger, and where the club face is pointing. If this angle is too small, you don't get enough friction to create high spin. It gets larger and larger, and you reach a point where, wow, you get the most amount of spin there. If you make this spin loft greater still, then you start to get slippage again, and so you lose spin. So this optimal spin loft is around 60 degrees, just under 60 degrees. So the tour players, when they hit their highest spinning wedge shots, are typically experiencing spin lofts around 57 degrees. If they're just hitting a standard shot, they'll be more like 53 to 54, lower risk of anything going wrong.
So what would that mean? What would that mean in a dynamic loft to attack angle? So attack angle might be what, and then dynamic loft would be what?
Okay, so let's just make the numbers easy. So let's say you've got a 10-degree attack angle down.
Mm-hmm.
Then to get to, let's say, 57, so you get 10 down, so we need 47 degrees of delivered loft.
Oh, because
So
you're 10 down and then 47 up, and then that difference is 57.
Yep.
Oh, and that's great.
Again, to put it in a practical way, that would mean if you had a 60-degree wedge, you need to lean it 13 degrees forward to deliver that 47 degrees of loft.
And that's given a square face?
Yep. Doesn't matter. I mean,
oh, even if now what if you fan it open? Aren't you increasing the loft of the club?
So you still got to deliver 47 degrees of loft, whether the leading edge is open or closed, it doesn't matter.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. So the more you open it to get to that 60, you might have to hit down on it a little more.
Down on it more, or lean the shaft more.
Oh, gotcha. That's really cool. Go ahead, Jack. What do you got?
So another thing I've been kind of thinking about while we've been talking about this is maybe one wedge versus your set of wedges. So whether that's taking one wedge and trying to manipulate that to apply a different amount of loft or shaft lean towards it, or using a pitching wedge 7-iron and hitting low shots, or using a higher lofted wedge and manipulating the face would kind of be my next question.
So the two approaches there, I think people would recognize, would be kind of like I think Stan Utley likes to use just one and manipulate it. And then there's like, I know Patrick, when I played with him, he likes to use like 7-iron and 8-iron and wedge and like all different kinds of clubs like they used to do more like 20 years ago. What do you like?
Yeah. I mean, personally, as a player, I tend to use different clubs. But I would say, having watched the tour players, they predominantly use the Stan Utley approach, where they'll use a single club and just change their impact dynamics in order to create the shot that they're trying to hit. Now, the reason I have a preference for using different clubs is that I can just use the same technique with a 60, a 55, and a 50-degree wedge and get quite different results. And I don't have 6 hours a day to play and practice golf. If I can get good at one technique and then just use the different static lofts to allow me to access different types of shots, that to me is a preferable way to go. And that's what I would advocate for amateur golfers. But I know full well that the tour players and the very best golfers tend to use, they have a workhorse wedge that they use most of the time. And I think part of that has to do with the fact that when you start to get to the green complexes that the PGA Tour deliver each week, you know, the 50-degree wedge and the typically the bump and run with a 9-iron just aren't effective on that fast and that firm a green.
You need more spin. So as agronomy and greens have gotten shorter, spin has become more important, you think?
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And particularly as they got firmer, Brendan.
Okay. Well, as we're trying to become better wedge players, and we're kind of in the initial phase of it, and we're doing more block practice, and we're kind of like pitching and putting, pitching around the green, you know, practice green. When we start finding a shot that has success, how should we start thinking about that to be like, okay, you know, should we start to think like, okay, how much is my shaft leaning, or what is the delivery, and kind of chart it down, or what's the process of success to?
My view on that one is I go to the skill-based type practice regimes for that sort of thing. Once you've got a good technique that you know you can reliably deliver the club, you know, not hitting it fat all the time or blading it and things like that, I like to put rings and ropes out. So a rope around the hole and a ring for a landing spot. And then tell the players to figure out how they can hit this shot to land in the ring and finish inside the rope. You can get all sorts of variations then, and they can choose to do it with different clubs or the same club.
So rather than a coaching approach might be like, hey, lean the shaft this much, deliver it like this. No, you just say, here's the task. You figure it out. You tell me how you're going to do this. Yeah.
But you can only do that once you've got some decent technique, because otherwise you're just setting someone up for failure.
Yeah, like I know Tim, a guy that works on the tour, a good friend of mine, short game person. He says, like, you want to be able to get to the point where you can get 8 out of 10 from a fairway lie, where you're hitting good contact 8 out of 10 times. And then so where you can kind of know where you're going to land it, and from a fairway lie. And he kind of uses that as his block practice thing that he has people go back to. You like that?
Well, I think that's very good, yeah.
Okay.
And then all you would do to extend that is you leave the ring and the rope exactly where they are, and then just put the ball in different places.
Dr. Rob, let me ask you, so if there were some wedge myths that you busted, like give us like 2 or 3 wedge things that people always say about wedges that you just found was not true when you got into the data. And I don't think we talked about before you answer that, talk about the data set and what you guys did to get this data. I don't think we talked about that yet, because it's really impressive.
So what we did initially was I reached out to the best wedge players in the world whom we could access. The list included Justin Rose, Graham McDowell, Tom Kite, Luke Donald, Brett Rumford, great Australian wedge player. I mean, major champions. And we measured them on a standard protocol, which was about 100 shots all up. So they would hit 10, 20, 30, 50, 75, 100-yard carry, square-faced shots. Then 5 at each distance. And then we would do 10, 20, 30 with open leading edge conditions, so high lofted shots out of the rough and out of the fairway. And then we also had 10, 20, 30 yard carried bunker shots as well. So And during those sessions, we would measure 3D using our golf biodynamics software and hardware application.
Yeah, that's the
High
markers
speed.
on the body and the
Yep.
accelerometer. Yeah, okay.
Then high-speed video from 2 cameras, and then launch monitor data, TrackMan GC Quad. So it was a very complete
Wow.
set of data. And then what our objective was to assemble that and say, what are the common features that all of these players seem to do? And it actually turns out that all of them do the same things in terms of how they get the ball to behave. And in order to do that, it's quite principled. I mean, it's physics, basically. If you want this behavior with the ball, then this object that you're using to strike the ball needs to be delivered the same way. It doesn't matter whether you're Tom Kite or Justin Rose. It doesn't know who's holding the club. It just knows this is how it was delivered. So,
And what were some myths that you bugged? Like 2 or 3 things that people say all the time about wedge play. That.
all right, a couple of things. When I first started delving into wedge play, I thought I had some computer code wrong because when I just gathered 3D data on about 25 to 30 high-level players, not the ones like we talked about just then. But I came out and said, 40, 50, 60, 70-yard shots, I think they were. Maybe, 40 to 70. And I looked at the results like this computer program ran for 6 hours analyzing the data. And at the end I went, holy shit, I must have a problem with my code here, because it came out that the shaft lean at impact was 16 degrees.
It's really leaning. Yeah. They're taking 16 degrees of loft off of it. Yeah.
I said, this can't be right. So I go back and I recheck my code and I thought, no, that's right. So I actually then when calculated a different way, using a different mathematical approach, results come out exactly the same another 6 hours later. So that was one of the biggest myths. People didn't think you leaned a wedge that far forward at impact. People didn't realize for wedge shots that you really need to lean the shaft forward a lot to hit high spinning, low launching wedge shots that are typical of what a tour player executes. Second thing I would say was, maybe it's one of my pet peeves, is that they talk about the bounce on the golf club, and that, they'll hold a wedge up with a shaft vertical, and say, "Oh, see how this rounded surface here? It'll really help you." It's kind of like insurance. Yes, it'll help you, but if your technique isn't good enough, if you can't control your attack angle and your shaft lean, you will not be a good wedge player, even if you have lots of bounce on your golf club, right? And predominantly for distance wedge shots, the bounce is irrelevant. The bounce becomes important when you start opening the leading edge up and you're starting to hit specialty shots. And therefore the grind on the bottom of the club is important in those as well. And it's kind of neglected, I think, by a lot of people. And
I think when people hear the advice, use the bounce, almost always what they do is get rid of the shaft lean. They kind of flip at it through, because like use the bounce, activate the bounce, but then they're nowhere close to that 16 degrees. They're like 10 degrees backwards.
Yeah. And even when you're hitting a finesse wedge shot, which has less shafting, about 8 to 10 degrees of forward shafting, you get a little bit of help from the bounce, but not a lot. Like the ability to hit good finesse wedge shots is about being able to raise the handle through impact so that you can keep your attack angle shallow on tight turf. One of the other myths that we uncovered when looking particularly at the finesse wedge zone is that
Jackie won't say busted, but he'll say uncovered. He won't say myth.
I noticed.
Myth uncovered. Okay.
Gotcha. He's not trying to start anything.
Yeah. Golf flame war.
Was that in hitting finesse wedge shots, you better be lifting your head, your chest, your whole body up
No. Don't lift the head. Keep your head down. That's what. Yeah.
If you want to be a bad wedge player, finesse wedge player, keep your head down, keep moving down, because you better be going up if you want to become good at that part of the game.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. That's awesome. That's really all I had. Jack, I know you have one more thing you wanted to ask.
I don't have anything specific, but I did think it was very interesting about the bounce, because I feel like whenever you talk to anyone about, about wedges or any kind of finesse shots, the overall blanket statement is, oh, you're not using the bounce right, or
your bounce is not activated.
Exactly.
Right.
But no, I don't think so.
But tour players really do go crazy about like how much bounce they have on the bottom, and like, oh, I'm going to play this course, I need this much bounce, or I want this kind of grind. So just to reiterate for us, when is the bounce really important on what kind of shot?
Well,
obviously the bunker, but other than that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as critical in the bunker as people think, actually.
Oh, okay.
Because you can take a 6-iron and hit beautiful bunker shots.
Maybe you can, yeah.
Yeah, because there's plenty of bounce. There's enough bounce on that club, and if you deliver it properly, you can hit really good bunker shots with a 6-iron.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Like flop type bunker shots. So where the bounce becomes critical, and this is the depth of it, not just the angle of it, is when you're playing off tightly mown surfaces and you're starting to open the leading edge up.
Oh, so like if you're on some hard pan or some tightly mowed and you open the face on a club that has a lot of bounce, you could really blade it because that leading edge is getting higher. Yeah, gotcha.
And the grinds, I mean, you just look at every tour player's wedge, and they'll have ground the heel away.
Yeah, so that they can open it without the leading edge getting higher.
Yeah. Exactly.
We just saw the shot that Rory hit in the Tour Championship. He was on some hard pan past the green on the 17th hole. I don't know if you saw, but he hit out of the bunker on the 17th hole, 20 yards over the green, and then he was on some hard pan and he laid it open, but he just couldn't get enough of he couldn't get the leading edge down enough, so it was a little thin, but he hit the stick, so it went to like 5 feet. So that's a great way to stop the ball as well.
Yeah.
So, final thing I wanted to ask you, if somebody's at home and they want to do one or two simple things to make them better wedge players. Let's say somebody's saying, hey, I can dedicate an hour a week to becoming a better wedge player. What do you think? What should they do in that hour?
So the first thing I'd recommend that they do, there's a digital download on wedge play. It covers distance and finesse wedge, not the bunker though. That comes there as a 12-week 15-minute video, approximately. Every week you get a 15-minute video that goes through all of the fundamentals and lots of drills and training activities for you to do.
That's on Wedge. Where is that? Where can we get that?
At www.wedgecraft.com.
Oh, cool.
Right.
And is that the type of thing where we put our email in and then we get a new video every week?
Yep.
Oh, awesome. Love it. Okay. But then how would they spend that hour? So that's like intellectually making them better. How do you think they should get technically better?
They've got to decide what part of wedge play they need to get better at. And we separate it into two zones, the finesse wedge, like the chip shots, versus the distance wedge shots. So if they're thinking about distance wedge shots, then the most important thing that they have to learn to do is to lean the shaft forward at impact. And
I told you, Jack, lag tension. He doesn't want to believe me. I told you. You need lag on every shot. All right, okay.
And there are lots of good training aids around to help them with that. And one of the ones I stumbled across just recently is this little clicking device that George Gankas sells. So, you put it on the back of your wrist here, and then when you flex, it clicks.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
But there are others. I mean, it's not like Gankas was the first to come up with something like that, but it's a nice little tool.
Okay.
So in the distance wedge zones, lean the shaft forward so you can start flighting the golf ball properly. In the finesse wedge zone, the most important thing, I'm going to talk as a right-hander here. So on your back swing, you need to go left and down And on your downswing, you need to stay there and go up as your body rotates. Left, yep, exactly.
Okay.
So that's what the body's got to do. If you can.
So never are you going back
Nope.
this way. We see that a lot with
Never,
people
never,
who end
never.
up flipping it. Okay.
Yep.
So almost if I had a pool noodle or something here on the side of my head, I'd go in the backswing. I'd go forward like
Away from
maybe an inch away from it, and then I'd stay away from it and then ascend.
Pop up. Yep.
Okay.
As you're rotating.
What's other than having somebody like holding their hand there or something? What's a good drill to
Pool
do
noodle.
that? Pool noodle. Okay, great. I know you guys have a great YouTube page that doesn't have that many subscribers, so I hope a lot of Be Better golfers go over to the Wedgecraft YouTube page because they're putting up some really good information and also like a full-length academic style meetings, Zoom meetings and stuff on there. What's your YouTube?
So it's wedgecraft.com as well.
Okay.
There's actually a reasonable amount of free content at our website as well. I mean, links to some of the YouTube videos that you referred to and so forth.
Right.
There's also material available at the Titleist instructional site. So there's content there, and there's obviously material you can purchase from the Wedgecraft website as well. And there's a new distance wedge or fairway wedge product coming out soon. We're still in the productions phases of it, but I think it will be out within the next couple of months.
Okay,
So
well we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you when that comes out because that sounds cool.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, great. Last thing I wanted to ask you is, so do I have this right? Like, if there was a big difference on fairway wedges and distance wedges between pros and amateurs, it's on shaft lean. Is that through? So that would be the real big difference. Okay, so I'll just let Jack know that because I think that's a big difference.
That's where,
in all shots they'd be flipping.
That's where
right?
all roads lead back to shaft lean and impact, right?
A lot of them, yeah. All right, Dr. Neal, thanks for joining us, guys. If you enjoyed this, be sure to go on. Right now, the podcast is exclusively on the Be Better Golf Telegram page. So if you don't have Telegram, it's an app that you can get on the App Store. So I'll be putting this out there, and then also I'll be putting this on the YouTube channel as well. So be sure to click subscribe to this video, and then also get the Telegram app. Thanks for watching. Bye.